Hi, my name is Juan DeAngulo. I am a managing partner with Elion Partners, a vertically integrated firm focused in the logistics industry. And we are here today for a fireside chat with my colleague, James Lambert. James, maybe you can tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks, Juan. You guys were fortunate, or I was fortunate enough to be introduced to you guys last year about this time, a little bit earlier, and we got to spend a lot of time together as we got to know each other. And I was very, very fortunate enough to join you guys in April. What a crazy time to join with the beginning of COVID. I leave one of the largest companies in the world to become employee number 21 with Elion, but it was the best decision of my life. So where did I come from? I came from Amazon. I was at Amazon for 5 years prior to joining Elion, where I was leading the distribution center with Amazon, what's called Amazon Logistics. I was hired there in 2015 to head up the real estate component of that company as a startup. So it was a startup within Amazon. Amazon had been disappointed with the results of the 2013 peak season, and they had decided at that time to create their own delivery system so that they weren't dependent on UPS, USPS, and FedEx. Prior to that, I spent about 15 years in retail real estate.
That's great. So what a great segue, James. Why don't we talk a little bit about the fundamentals of industrial real estate pre-pandemic and what was going on there. So obviously you had a front row seat, as has Elion over the last 10 years, but being at Amazon, you definitely had a front row seat for the pressure that e-commerce has been putting on the asset class. Can you talk a little bit about some of those trends and what you were seeing pre-pandemic in terms of the type of NOI and what was going on the rents and just the general dynamics that you were dealing with as you were looking for space for Amazon?
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, we just felt like a surfer that had a good surf out there, in Point Break, and we went out there and we were riding a nice break. Everything was going good. You just waited for the swell to come in, and then we could ride it. Starting in 2015, really starting in 2012, Amazon led the entire industrial real estate sector. They started taking down a lot of big bummers. So we're talking those fulfillment centers of greater than 1 million square feet. But then when I was able to join in 2015, Amazon really started to look at that last mile and that middle mile component. And with that, then you see this great acceleration. And that's where I say we were kind of just riding those waves. Nothing was too serious. Amazon can project out because they have so much data about their clients and or the customer base and what the customer is going to order. I don't know about you, but I think there's times where I'm discussing something and then all of a sudden I see a suggestion from Amazon about a sale on the same item. So it's like they're reading my mind in many ways. And so the forecast capabilities that Amazon has to be able to figure out where the people are, what they're going to buy, and how to get it there, they were really just, again, riding that wave. And that was going very steady for them. Compounded growth rate greater than 20% for probably the last 15, 20 years. That was continuing. And then COVID hit. And then what did COVID do? COVID accelerated all of that. Nobody saw this coming the way that it happened.
So that's interesting, James, because you just gave us a picture from the tenant's perspective. For us being on the landlord side of the equation, over that same time span, over the last 5 to 10 years, and owning both the first mile large distribution centers as well as owning last mile facilities, it was very interesting to see the continued growth in NOI, the continued pressure on space and the demand for the space, and then just seeing these markets like South Florida, like New Jersey, and other core markets that just the level of competition just continued to put a lot of upward pressure on NOI. And all of this we're talking about pre-pandemic, let alone we'll get into what the pandemic has brought about. But it definitely has been very interesting. It also when you go back 10 years ago till now, you've seen a lot of compression on cap rates, a lot of demand for these last mile distribution centers, even prior to the pandemic. So definitely some very interesting pre-pandemic trends there from a capital market standpoint. So James, we talked about some of the trends pre-pandemic that had to do with capital markets, such as the NOI growth and the compressed cap rate. But let's talk a little bit about some of the trends that were there from the use of the space. So things like cold storage, automation, materials, technology, just, different drivers that you saw, like multi-story use as a potential solution for some of the compression that you were seeing as a tenant. What were some of those trends out there?
Yeah, a lot packaged in there, Juan. I'm going to try to hit them all. So when I don't, you let me know which one I missed. So
No
from an overall industrial last mile distribution use, we're talking about core industrial markets where there's a lack of inventory within these typically larger urban markets. So tremendous competition for that. It's not just Amazon. It can be Wayfair. It can be Home Depot. It can be the food distribution networks like Blue Apron, which also kind of leads into that refrigerated use as well. So a lot of demand for very, very limited supply in these core urban markets. In addition, you mentioned cold storage. So pre-pandemic, cold storage, there was Amazon Fresh. There was all of these new food box distribution uses. And me personally, I think it was probably 3 or 4 like startups in stealth mode that contacted me. It could have been the same one. I don't know for sure. That contacted me to kind of headhunt me to help them with this. So I know that there's these other groups that are out there looking for real estate that is core urban, very close to the customer. Because when you look at the logistic network and you look at the delivery network, the most expensive component of a delivery to an end user customer at their house is the point where it gets put on a vehicle and delivered to the end user. It's the most important component of the entire delivery process. So everybody wants to be closer to the customer because that reduces that cost. So there was already a lot of pressure on that. And so when you see those demand pressures for that kind of real estate that's close to those customers, close to those rooftops, then of course, with limited supply, you're starting to see all of the NOI increases that we started to see. Cap rates were coming down. They still continue to come down. And then eventually cap rates will only go down so far. And then the miracle of rent growth comes with it on the other side.
So James, you've mentioned a few times now this tremendous pressure on a limited supply of real estate, which is one of the primary drivers that drove Elion Partners and the people here to choose to focus on logistics, almost a decade ago. But what are some of the potential solutions for that supply and demand dislocation, or is there a solution? I know that I'm out there speaking to a lot of institutions that are looking to invest in this space, and it's a question that I get often.
Yep.
So are there potential technology solutions or multi-story warehousing that could potentially solve the dislocation?
So definitely when you look at somebody like Amazon invested in robotics 10 years ago when they bought Kiva, and they continue to make a lot of investments. There's now in Otay Mesa, south of San Diego, I recently saw a building that's 90 feet clear, and there's several rows of Amazon robotics that are going to be pushed. I don't know what it looks like, but they're going to be pushing stuff around. So for Amazon, definitely they're investing in robotics. And I think we're going to see other companies then following that, because it does make a lot of sense to try to automate the processes.
And do you think that this could get to the point of solving the supply demand dislocation to where you're going to see a slowdown of upward rent growth? Or do you think that the demand is going to continue to outpace technology evolution?
I don't think until we see the day that a robot can actually pick the product up from the delivery station, from the last point where a user has it until it delivers it to your house, we're going to see anything like that. Because at that point, you could have a delivery station where that last mile facility 30 miles from the end user, 30 miles from the rooftops. Right now, you can't do that. It has to be a driver. It has to be manual. Somebody has to pick that package up. They have to receive it from the distribution facility, and they have to deliver it to somebody's doorstep. There isn't a solution for that. Now, of course, Amazon has this cute little robot, which I saw, riding around in front of my office at 9:30 one night, and they were testing it out. And then they're testing it out in San Francisco. These are one-off situations. These aren't going to become commonplace for a really, really long time. There's no replacing a human being that is going to pick that product up from the distribution facility and deliver it to your house for a very, very long time. So as a result, we're going to see that they have to continue to stay within the urban core. And within those urban cores, you asked about multi-level. Definitely, we're starting to see some multi-levels. So Panattoni has developed a multi-level facility in Seattle. They've developed a multi-level facility in San Francisco, or actually Oakland. And there is what's not really recognized as a multi-level facility, but it is in sorry, just lost the name. Middle Village, Queens. And what you're gonna see is that those multi-level facilities, so they have distribution on one level and parking on different levels. You're going to see that only in very, very core markets that have ultra density. So we're talking New York, San Francisco, probably not LA, because LA is so spread out, but New York, San Francisco, potentially Seattle. Other than that, we're not expecting to see a lot of this multi-level like you would see in Asia from Amazon or other operators.
So the short answer is that in the foreseeable future, there is no solution for the dislocation of supply and demand.
There's no solution. Humans matter.
That's right. Well, that's great. That means we're not being sent home yet anyway.
Thank goodness, right?
That's right. That's right. So let's talk about, we've talked a lot about the trends that were in place pre-pandemic. So let's talk about what has that pandemic brought about? Like, what are the realities that you and I and others in this sector, the tenants, the landlords, what is the reality that we're facing now that the pandemic hit? And what has been the impact on all these trends?
It's been a fascinating 7 months. If we roll back to April, May, everybody was kind of holding their breath. What's going to happen? We knew that on the retail side, on the residential side, on the office side, well, take them in stride. So on the retail side, everybody was closing down. Across the country, everybody was closing down. On the residential side, you started to see people who couldn't make their rent payments because they'd been laid off. And in large urban markets, you started to see a flight. So younger people, particularly, who were living in large urban cities, New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Seattle, San Francisco, they were moving home because they didn't want to have to pay the large rents that they were. So they were leaving, causing tons of vacancy. And then what happened to the office? So in the office, New York is at 16% occupancy right now. Only 16% of the people who are working in an office in New York are there. I was at Amazon at the time, the beginning of March, right after Microsoft. Amazon was the first major employer in the United States to say, we're sending everybody home. And it hit the New York Times. Couldn't believe it. And what are we doing now? Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen to those three segments right now? All of the interest then has now shifted to industrial. So what's happened here? We held our breath. We're like, what's going to happen? Well, industrial seems to take a little longer for everything to set in. We never saw the rent abatements didn't come. The non-rent, the non-payment of rents didn't happen. And then there was a bit of pause on transactions, but it was just a pause. everybody held their breath to see what was going on. And that went on until about July. And then July came, and then we're all reading in all of the media that industrial is still alive. And then it was game on. Now what we have within the industrial sector is investors from those other segments who are scared of those other segments, who want to pour money into the industrial sector, who are making incredibly crazy offers on real estate because they don't understand, because they have FOMO, fear of missing out, and they want to get involved. So what we're seeing right now is the industrial sector is the place to be, but there's a lot of crazy activity within this sector, but it's also very stable because industrial is where all of the products that are going to your house, instead of going to Target or Walmart or Safeway or some other place, and they're probably still going to Safeway. Now you can get them right from the warehouse.
Well, James, it's been a great addition, all your wealth of knowledge. But obviously having the ability to be that granular also translates into the ability to identify opportunities to invest in some of these last mile locations that maybe are not perfect or are not stabilized. And we're able to come in and invest on behalf of the investors that have trusted us to go out and execute on these value add strategies. So it's great to chat. It's been a very enjoyable fireside chat. And even though it's not cold enough in South Florida to really consider it a fireside, but I'm sure it is in Seattle.
Here.
So thank you.